Hi everyone, welcome. In this video, I want to explain to you the different ways to play a major scale, and then I'll also give you an exercise you can do from time to time. This exercise will really open your mind about the fretboard, the notes on the fretboard. So, as we were saying, the different ways to play a major scale. Why is that? Because obviously, if I ask you, do you know a major scale? Can you play the major scale? You'll most likely say, yes, I know it, and it's this one. For example, the C major scale. Let's do it here. Okay, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Super simple. Okay, but this isn't the only way to play a major scale, obviously, because by now you'll have realized that the fretboard is wide. There are lots of possibilities, lots of positions to use. So this is just the classic way to play a major scale. But then, instead, in this video, we're going to assume that you already know how to play a major scale. If that's not the case, I'll refer you to this video that appears over here on your right. A banner pops up with the link to the lesson where I actually introduce and explain the classic major scale. But here and now, we're going to look at alternative ways to play the major scale. Why is that? Because we can play it in different positions, starting with different fingers. And these types of shapes, these ways of playing the major scale, allow us to move much more easily along the fretboard. So, as we said, the first way is the classic one, right? Middle, pinky, index, middle, pinky, index, ring, pinky. But then we also have a second way where we basically start with the pinky from the starting note, the tonic of the scale. So in this case C. I have my pinky on the C note on the E string at the 8th fret, okay? So I have the C. And starting with the pinky, then I go with the index finger to the 5th fret on the A string and get the D, ring finger for the E, ring finger on the 7th fret, pinky on the 8th fret, I get the F. So C, D, E, F. Then, index finger down to the D string at the 5th fret, we have the G, then pinky or ring finger, you can use either, but pinky is better, and now I'll explain why. Pinky on the 7th fret, still on the D string, we have the A, because then I need to move down one string and back one fret to get the B with the index finger on the 4th fret, and then we get the C with the middle finger on the 5th fret. Okay, so the whole thing goes like this. All right? To go back up, you can either do it like I do, by jumping with the ring finger, or more comfortably with the pinky. But then, of course, for this G on the 5th fret, you need to use your index finger. Okay? And this is the first alternative way to play the major scale. So, this works in any key, obviously, because for example, if we're in the key of a major, I start with the pinky on the 5th fret of the E string and then I do index on the 2nd fret of the A string, ring finger on the 4th fret, pinky on the 5th, index at 2nd fret of the D string, pinky on the 4th fret of the D string, then I move back, index on the 1st fret of the G string and middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, and we're back to A, okay? This part, as I already explained, you can do it with your pinky, which makes it easier to move over here, or with your ring finger, but you have to remember that you'll still need to make this jump, okay? Backwards. Okay, so that was the second way. Let's go back to our C major. So, the first way, which we already knew, the classic one. Second way, which we just learned. Third way. Third way, it's about starting with your index finger from the position from the root note, basically from the tonic. So index finger, then you move forward with the middle finger, but by 2 frets. Usually, the middle finger moves up by 1 fret, so in this case it would be from the 8th to the 9th fret. But no, this time, since we're in a major key, you can't just move up by 1 fret, it's obvious, because we know the second is major. The second degree of a major scale, the second degree is major. If we only moved up by 1 fret, it would be a minor second degree, and that's not what we want. So, as we were saying, index finger, then middle finger 2 frets up, so at the 10th fret on the E string, pinky another 2 frets up, 12th fret still on the E string, and then on the string below, exactly the same thing, index, middle, pinky. This is easy to remember, you see? Maybe it's a bit trickier to play because of that index to middle finger jump. For those who don't have very big hands, it can be a bit tricky, but you can also, after playing with the index finger, lift it off to play the second note. You don't have to keep it pressed down all the time. Okay? Then, once we've reached the 12th fret on the A string with the pinky, here we have C, D, E, F, G, A. Then we have the B right below, with the index finger on the 9th fret of the D string, okay? So you see, the index finger has now shifted, because we play the index in the 8th position, still in the 8th position, then move to the 9th position on the D string, and then the middle finger 1 fret ahead, and we get C again. So the third way is this one. Okay, let's recap the 3 ways. The first way, we call it the classic way. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Second way, the one where you start with the pinky. 4, we start with 4 with the pinky. 4, 1, 3, 4. 1 and 3 are 4, but you move forward by 2 frets and then back with the index and middle finger to the 5th fret. Okay? Second way. Third way, you start with the index, 1, 2, 4, but the 2 skips 2 frets. On the lower string, same thing, 1, 2, 4, with the 2 skipping 2 frets. Then the index goes where it already is, you see, already in its natural position at the 9th fret in D string, and pinky and middle finger on the 10th fret, and then you go back. Okay? Okay? Alright, these are the three different ways to play a major scale. You need to work on these things because you'll need them, but I'll help you too. Look, if we take, for example, a C scale, in the opposite direction, so going up, that is, moving toward the lower notes, we can play from C. This is C on the 5th fret, G string. We can play it the classic way, pinky, ring, index, pinky, middle, index, pinky, middle. Or we can play it in the way, the one where you start with the pinky. That is, when you start with the pinky, you end with the middle finger. So, when we play it backwards, we start with the middle finger from C. Okay? Once we get to this point, so let's do it this way. We start from C, go down, then we come back up with the one where you start with the pinky. So from here, to go back up, we start with the middle finger. When we get to this point, our pinky is on the C position. Let's play the C again with the pinky, move forward 2 frets with the pinky, and do the classic way to go back down. Once the pinky reaches the 10th fret on the D string on this C, we go back up with the middle finger, so the position is the one where you start with the pinky. If you have a 5-string bass, like myself, you can extend your pinky finger to the very last string, specifically on the B string, at the 13th fret, and by doing so, you will successfully achieve a C note. Otherwise, once you reach this particular G note, or, I apologize, this specific D note, you should then return back to the C note. Okay? Once you successfully arrive at the C note, you are then able to continue onward with the established pattern that naturally progresses forward using your middle and pinky fingers. But it's important to note that you will be skipping the initial pattern, the one that originally starts with the index finger, just to be absolutely clear and precise. Okay? And here, if you have a 4-string, we've reached the end. But if you have a 5-string like me, you can do this. We were here at the C. Instead of going back, we go with the pinky to the 1st string, the B string, at the 13th fret, and we have this C. And then we start from this C with the index finger and do that one, the pattern that starts from the index. So, index, middle on the 15th fret. I use the ring finger here on the 17th because it starts to get uncomfortable. Okay? Same thing on the string below, and then index, middle. Okay, you see we've reached the same note. I mean, we're always playing the same notes, not changing the octave and so going to a higher octave, but always staying in the same octave, just moving along the whole neck. This should help you understand just how broad a perspective you can get if you practice this way. So let's recap this exercise. You start in the natural position from C, that is, the standard position, and you reach the pinky. Then you go back from the pinky, and so you finish the C. From this C, you start again with the position that starts from the index finger. From this C, you go back with the one that starts with the pinky. If you have a 5-string, go up to the B string, or go back to the E string at the 8th fret. So from here, we can do from this 13th fret. We can always do the one that starts with the index finger, and we've made it, okay? And then you can also do the whole thing in reverse, this whole sequence, this thing. Or if you want, you can switch the parts around, okay? So for example, we started from the classic C. Let's start from the classic C, but from below. So, pinky, ring finger, index, pinky, middle, index, pinky, middle. Then we can do this. From here, we switch it up and start with the one that begins with the index finger, and we end up at C again. Then we go back with the one that starts with the pinky. Then from this one, we move forward and do the classic one. Then from here, we go back with the one that starts with the pinky again, and so on. You see that in the end, we always end up in the same position by doing it this way, meaning in both cases we end up at the same spot. Okay, that's the exercise. That's the thing. I'm sure that many of you may be new. How can I put it? On a knowledge level that there were other ways to play the major scale, but you hadn't looked into it deeply. And do it. Because if you want to become good bassists or good musicians in general, you'll have to learn to push your mind beyond what you already know. If you only stay where you feel comfortable, always doing the same things, you stay stuck, you don't grow. But if you make the effort to learn new things, even if at first it might be more difficult, this will lead you to the next steps where other things become clearer, easier, and therefore more accessible. And in this way, you move forward, you grow. If, on the other hand, You only do what you already know how to do. You never grow. You don't move forward because you stay stuck in your, let's say, in your comfort zone. I also wanted to tell you, make sure to do this exercise not just in C as I showed you now, but also in different positions, in different keys. For example, you can do it starting from F. We have the F here, and we can do the one that starts with the pinky, basically. So we start with the middle finger. You have to remember, if you want to go backwards, that you start with the middle finger. In other words, to go backwards, you start with the pinky, okay? So, for example, here we are in F, and starting with the pinky, I go backwards, or from here. Obviously, here I have open strings, so I need to use other positions, but that's the idea. Then, another way to go back is with the middle finger, okay? And yet another technique involves the use of the middle finger, but in this particular instance, we will move back 2 full frets from the position of this middle finger. You see, up to this point, it's all the same. I could do this or this. These two are similar. They both start with the middle finger, okay? So if you do this in different positions, in different keys, you'll remember it better, maybe just starting from the bottom up. So then, when you're playing, improvising with someone, with friends, you find yourself, I don't know, on a D. Okay? And you know how to move because then obviously, if you have a 5 string, this really helps you because you always have the pinky anchored on the 5th string. And that's what I love about the 5 string, because with a 4 string you don't have that option, right? If I start on the D, it's really just a matter of convenience. I have to go down with my index finger to reach this G, whereas here I have it with my pinky in this position, which is super comfortable. So this is a bit of a digression. It doesn't really have to do with the exercise, but since we're here I want to tell you this. I'm convinced that the 5 string is superior to the 4 string, not because it has those 4 extra notes, because really it's just 4 extra notes, right? Actually 5, to be honest, because there's also this B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, or E flat. These are the extra notes. After E, the 4 string has those notes too. But it's not about those 5 extra notes. It's about the fact that in every position it gives me more support to stay in position and not have to move around to finish things, okay? This is the classic example. Okay, this is just one of the many examples I could give you. Alright, good. Do this exercise every now and then. Sit down and study it, and also come up with some alternatives yourself. By now you've understood. I mean, you need to take advantage of the 3 positions, the 3 ways of playing. First, the classic way. Second, the way where you start actually. Let's do it from here because it's better. First, the classic way where you start with the middle finger, and to go back you start with the pinky. Second way, you start with the pinky, and to go back you start with the middle finger. But up to this point, everything is the same, even with the new one, the other one. Then we go back up with the pinky. And then, the third way is where you start with the index finger. I'll do it from here now. And basically there's this little jump, and then to go back you also return with the middle finger in this case. But once you get to this point, instead of going here, you move back 2 keys with the index finger and keep going back, okay? These 3 ways of playing the major scale are by far the most important and most commonly used. Try it out in all the keys. Have fun even playing in keys that then require you to use some open strings, right? F, for example, starting from here goes like this, right? F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. You see that I went back using that other way, the one where you start with the pinky, but in this case, to play F, I either have to go back with the index finger if I have a 4th string, or with the pinky, as I mentioned before, I go up and find the F at the 6th fret on the B string. Alright, that's all for now. Remember to study, practice, and like music in everyone who wants to get better at bass. Bye, see you at the next lesson.